Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Catalysts, a platform for the scientific community to connect, discover, and transform. This is your host, Kedar Aras, and today I have the distinct pleasure to connect with Dr. Alonso Moreno, Professor of Medicine at the University of Utah, as well as an adjunct professor of bioengineering also at the University of Utah. Dr. Moreno's research is in the field of cardiac cellular electrophysiology. His lab focuses on the study of intercellular communication through gap junctions. So, what are gap junctions? Without getting too technical, gap junctions are specialized communication tunnels between cells. They facilitate the passage of electrical signals, which is how cells such as neurons and heart cells communicate with each other. Gap junctions are essential to the body's proper functioning, and their abnormal behavior can lead to various diseases, including congenital heart defects, cardiac arrhythmias, among others. Dr. Moreno's lab is currently focused on understanding the biophysical and biochemical mechanisms necessary to re-establish communication between cells from a damaged tissue, as happens, say, after a heart attack. Dr. Moreno truly represents the spirit of catalysts. He actively seeks to connect and build lifelong relationships, is a big proponent of research through collaboration, and takes pride in mentoring his students. Not only has he discovered the benefits of collaborative research, but through his connections, he has been able to transform his career as well as the careers of others. Dr. Moreno, thank you for taking the time to join us and share your insights. As you may know, this podcast is designed for people in the scientific community, primarily the grad students, postdoctoral graduate students, and perhaps even assistant professors who are just about ready to embark on their research careers. And oftentimes, the first question they have is, how do you establish a successful research career? And for graduate students, what's intimidating is making the transition from being done with grad school and taking the next step. So I was curious, based on your personal experience, how did you make that transition from grad school into your research career?
Well, thank you very much before anything else, but I think there are different levels of success in terms of how do you catalog an investigator. Success can be very good at getting a lot of grants and getting a lot of money, but also I think it's very important when success can be measured on the impact of the researcher with the students. So I think both things are going to be very important. So in terms of the academic part, the transition between going from graduate student to a real worker, I should say, it was favored on my side that while I was working on my final years in my PhD thesis, we needed to record intracellular pH. I'm going to be very specific on this because it was a very specific technique that we didn't have at the university that I was working in. At that time, a researcher from Albert Einstein College of Medicine came and gave a talk, and it was great to find out that they were doing that. So it was just a way to increase the relation between my tutor and this researcher that was at Albert Einstein, in order for me to go and learn the technique and come back with that. That immediately opened a lot of venues in terms of the transition. Why? Because at that time, this researcher at Albert Einstein was able to see my work. I worked like crazy, of course, as everybody has to do. So I was working like crazy on it, and eventually he, at the end of a stay that I did in the summer of 1985, he told me, well, you're welcome to come here as a postdoc. that was a successful transition. I At that time, while I was finishing my PhD, I had already established relations with other people in California and also in Minnesota. So I think that the transition has to be not only on yourself but also on things that the laboratory that you're working in have, that is interrelations with other laboratories, so you can go and continue your research on that.
Got it. So you mentioned your advisor helped with the transition.
Yes, absolutely.
Were there any other mentors in addition to your advisor that kind of helped you guide your path along the way? And how was that experience like for you?
Well, the thing is, yes, it opens when you go to another place, and this place is well connected, I should say. I think that is very important. Because, yes, as soon as I went there and start working as a postdoc, and of course, working hard to get a certain number of publications and to go to meetings and meet other people is very important. Mm-hmm. So the next transition was even, I think, smoother, I should say, because once you have a successful postdoctoral work, there come the offers. It is not that you at that point have to look, but if your work is in the area that you like and the people that it's around you find out what you're doing and they are interested in what you're doing, of course they'll call you. And as soon as you go to a meeting and you tell them, well, I'm in the second year of my postdoc and I'm going to start looking, if you're doing a good job, they will start asking you to come for a second postdoc. So depending on your work, it is a matter of getting funded. The second transition is hard in terms of getting funded. It's easier on where to go. In my case, I was able to get a couple of grants from the American Heart Association, a fellowship and a grant in, it was a grant in aid at that time, I recall. And that sort of secured my position because although it was not a large grant like an R01, people knew that I can get money. So that's attractive for somebody else. And in that case, the help came from a professor that was doing work at Buffalo in molecular biology that I wanted to learn because my specialty at that time was only electrophysiology in large and small animals and cells. So the next transition for me was to do molecular biology. And this person approached to me asking me if I wanted to work. But I have to be sincere on this. I was not that thrilled with the position, but I knew it was a way to get out of the initial one. So that's sort of the next step. So I became research assistant professor. I didn't want to become research. I wanted to go into tenure track, but I was still not strong enough. But I thought that in the next 6 years and having this previous funding, I will be strong enough to jump then to a tenure track position.
And from that, eventually you made it to CVRTI.
Oh no, I got the assistant track position, the assistant professorship there as a research assistant professor, which gives you a non-secure position in the university. So immediately after 3 years of work, I got an R29 from the NIH, and that gave me the strength to start searching around. And at that time, I was strong enough to get an invitation from the Cranert Institute of Cardiology with Dr. Zipes in Indianapolis. And that sort of gave me leverage for salary, work, people, and that was the next transition. So I got there now a tenure track as an associate professor with my own R29. So that's good because that gives you money for 5 years. And then the next transition, it was coming here to the CVRTI. And that happened 10 years ago in 2005, where I was approached by Dr. Ken Spitzer because they were building a more basic science group here at the CVRTI, and they needed somebody to work in gap junctions. So they approached me. And at that time, I just got an R01, so it was an easier leverage now to have a larger leverage and an easier way to make the transition to go to the CVRTI.
Got it. So from your grad school, it was the connections with the lab established in Albert Einstein that gave you the postdoc opportunity, and then your work and your success there as
Exactly.
a postdoc helped you transition into your research assistant professorship.
Exactly.
And then with the funding you were able to gather and grant, that opened up more opportunities, and eventually you were able to land here.
Yeah, but I think it is the two more important things are, no, three I should say, the connections that are available, your hard work that translate in having your own funding. And that's what gives you leverage. Because that way you can go to wherever you think you want to go. That's the important part.
Interesting. So the next segue I had in mind is you had initially described your area as small animals, intracellular research, communication research, and then you got transitioned into molecular biology. The question I had was, did you identify gap junction research as your field, or did it pick you? More
That's
of
a
a
good question. No, well, I have to tell that my when I finished my biology bachelor's, I was working on plants, electrical communication on plants. So I was more into communication. So gap junction communication sort of picked me up because I was in the whole area of synapses, either plants, either gap junctions, direct communication, or a nervous synapse. And doing a postdoctoral at the Albert Einstein, and I was able to be in the neuroscience department. So it was a combination of that. It was very, very interesting to see the interaction between gap junctions and synapses in neurons. But still, there was a lot of work to do in terms of the characterization, the biophysics of channels. So my main idea was cellular communication, either gap junctions, synapses, or whatever it was, but studying the biophysics of it. And that's why I got into the field, because it was a very new field to start doing molecular biology to express the channel DNA into exogenous system and then do the analysis using patch clamp. So it's a myriad of techniques that need to be dominated in order to study the biophysics of the channel. So in a certain way, yeah, gap junctions captured me. And you follow the ideas and the things that you like, and it was interesting.
So you had this background in an interest in cell-to-cell communication, and eventually that made its focus clear with gap junctions.
To gap junctions, exactly, yes.
Now you also mentioned about how the key is being able to get funding for your research. You talked about getting an R29 grant, eventually an R01 grant, and initially starting off with AHA grant. So when you're trying to establish a research lab and you're looking for funding, how do you identify what grants to focus on? And more importantly, what does it take to write a successful grant?
That's a very difficult question. Well, the question is good. The answer is difficult because to obtain the real sense on which grant you want to go after requires a lot of experience, not only in the sense of your own work, but on how the field is moving. That is what gives you the successful in granting. In my personal case, during the first years, I mean, from my 21st years of research, biophysics was big. Now biophysics is not big. I have a couple of grants that are now related to biophysics on gap junctions, but because of the funding situation, everybody now is after translational medicine, translational research. So they're standing there. I submit it every year or every 2 years, trying to get more data about it, but the study sections are not that happy with them. So my competition has gone very, very high on that area, and that forces me to go after other venues, other areas, and that's what I'm doing now in my lab. those grants, I'm still applying. I'm applying with new publications and new work about the biophysics of the channels, knowing that my chances are 40%. But in the lab, we have been developing more translational research on trying to establish more bioengineering approach using my background on heterocellular communication and modeling that I have learned, mathematical modeling that I have learned here, in order to now focus to another area. So let's say that you go after the chicken wherever the path is. So that's the thing. You have to, if you want to have a successful grant, yes, you can stay fighting like crazy in an area that might not be interesting now. And I have several examples for many people and researchers that I met during my career that had been fighting on something that it's interesting intrinsically, but not interesting for a lot of the community. So they never became successful in their area because they didn't apply a little bit extra to do some other research. They were focused, and I think that is a very traumatizing path. You have to adapt to whatever is there. You have to adapt. Like a business, you have to adapt to what it's selling. Go after that. Although you have to stay honest in your convictions and what you want to do, but modify a little bit. So go into what it's sold, that you can get into it and then become successful. So that's the way you analyze I think, in my point of view, how you have to analyze the perspectives of which grants to follow. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Oh yes, so what I'm hearing is you have to be flexible. And right now the trend is translational research. So if your research is basic research and not necessarily translational, you have to find some sort of bridge so that you can sell it in that space to have a better chance to get the research.
And dedicate your 40% to what you like. And hopefully, eventually, it will come back so we get more money from the NIH and we can start funding on that.
Right.
But yes, you have to be flexible to find new paths. That's what I can say.
Very interesting. The second piece of the puzzle for me has been chasing after money. That is a skill and art in itself. And some people succeed, some people don't. But the other challenge is expanding on your research and coming up with new ideas. So my question was, how do you come up with new research ideas? Are they organically developed based on the data you collect from your existing research, or are there new paths or avenues you actively seek out to kind of expose yourself to new ideas?
I think in the microcosmos, yes, it's your own research, your discussion with students, postdocs, and other faculty that bring the ideas. I mean, just in a seminar, you're giving a talk, and somebody comes with a question that is very good. That breaks your way of thinking and allows you to open your mind about something that could be really, really different and interesting. That's one way that it comes out. The other one is the interaction with other researchers. I think the participation in meetings, the participation in talks, or the assistant to go to the talks that are presented in the university, that opens your mind about how to deal about the problems that you are looking after, and the new ideas when they are pretty big. You mostly, when they present on you, when you're doing a research in the bibliography, or you go to a talk and you find a topic that could be very interesting, usually it's occupied. It's usually, when you hear it, it's because already somebody has been 2 miles ahead of you. But the thing, that's what I consider important, is that you can give those things a twist on the area that you're working. So you're going to fill a niche that is between whatever people is doing very strongly, let's say in neuroscience, like using light, sensitive channels, and then adapt it to either your heart or a small interaction between neurons. And so the adaptation that you give to the using the ideas of others to solve their problems in their field into your field and the ideas that you have. I think that's what makes the progress on any field. Just is the interaction with other people and their approach to solving their problems.
Got it. So don't limit yourself to ideas only you can generate, but
You did.
look for collaborations and expose yourself to even adjacency fields and see if some of those ideas can be applied to what you're doing.
Yes, exactly. Yes, it's not. If you stay, I mean, you have to be very, very bright to really stay in your ideas and completely solve whatever you want. I mean, I would have ever never imagined that I was going to be working with light dependent channels. Suddenly they appear. Wow, that's something that immediately triggers your attention. You go after it. Yeah.
Got it. And a segue from that is you mentioned exposing yourself to new ideas through other people, talking to other people, faculty at the conferences. So the third piece is the collaboration piece. So the question then becomes is, how does one go about seeking collaboration? Is that something that is actively part of your philosophy to expand on your research, or do you wait for someone to come to you and say, hey, Dr. Moreno, I love your research, I'm doing something related to that, would you like to collaborate? Or how does that process work?
Well, I will give you an analogy, and that's girlfriends. It is complicated in the sense that the way you collaborate in present time depends on how your collaborations were before. Is as with girlfriends. If you didn't have, I mean, if you have very bad experiences with your girlfriends when you were young, it's very hard to get a hard relationship currently with a woman. I'm talking about heterosexual relations, but it's the same with collaborations. When I had some bad experience when I was very, very young in my career, and then when I switched to another laboratory and I saw that the bread on that laboratory was collaborations, that changes completely your mind, and you realize that you have to collaborate in order to move faster and become more competitive. Is the same as any other type of company, any enterprise that requires to be successful needs not to depend on itself, needs collaboration. You have to open your laboratory to collaborate when you are requested to, and also try to ask with all confidence about something that you need. So the need, the demand, it is there. So it depends. If you want something, you have to trade something. There's people in this field, as in other fields, that they don't trade. They want everything for themselves. You have to be aware of those black holes. Never get close to them. So, but if you are interacting with people that like to collaborate, collaborations are good, permanent. I'm still collaborating with people that I was working with during my postdoctoral, because if you work honestly, if you don't try to get all the cookie, and if you give, not only expecting to receive, but you know that probably you give now and later you're going to receive. It's personal relations. I think it's very important to collaborate. If you see my list of collaborators are a lot, and I've always something very important on this. Now that you are starting as a postdoc or as finishing your graduate studies, or you're starting a new position as a professor, it is very, very important never to burn your how to say your bridges. Don't stop collaborating with the people. Keep them on touch. Keep them collaborating with them, because something very important is that not in the field only on collaboration you will have a successful career in terms of academic or research collaboration, but also in human relations. Professional work is very important in the lab as in the telephone, the internet, or the emails, because now I'm really, really sure that many of the interactions that I started at the beginning of my career are becoming successful now. Just because somebody finds your paper, they give you a call, and they say, "Oh, I have a very good idea for you about this." Some things that you never expected, they suddenly appear. If you block yourself to collaboration, human relations, if you don't deal with in a good way with human relations, you're dead. It's as any other field. You need to collaborate with people and have an honest relationship in order to get it all.
Got it. So collaborate or you won't succeed in this field. And be open to collaboration.
Especially now that there are so many techniques that you don't handle. If I want to do the biophysics of the channels, the area is so limited. But now here, for example, at CVRTI, and that's why I choose to come to this place, you have, for example, other researchers like Sarah Franklin that is doing more on the genetics of stuff. Or you can go with Dr. Bridge, who's doing some more calcium stuff. I don't handle those techniques, but they are here around the laboratory. And that if you collaborate, you immediately know the answer for some questions, and you say, "Oh, I'll go or not." If you don't have collaborations, you can hit the wall during your whole career. And I think it's worth.
Got it. So results are much more faster when you collaborate.
Yes.
Got it. Got it. Then the third piece of the puzzle is students that work in your lab. How do you identify students you want to work in your lab? What kind of skill sets do you look for, say, as a graduate student or a postdoc?
Let me go from lower to higher. If for graduate students, lower in terms of knowledge, only that. But usually for the graduate students, definitely you want somebody with a good GPA. Definitely, that shows you that the person has been sort of committed to what they're doing. Commitment is very important. The second thing that I want from either graduate students, postdocs, or initial faculty people is that they do their homework, that they really come prepared to talk to you in an interview, knowing what your laboratory does, what is your pathway on research, especially what they want to do. If a person doesn't have a very good idea on what they think they can do or how they can come with something to give either to the lab or to the research that has been done and has been going on in the lab, I think it's not worth picking. Because if somebody comes to say, "Well, I just want to see what I can do here," that's out of the question, totally. But if you find a student that might not have a great GPA, but has been searching on my bibliography, and he can come or she can come with a very good idea on how things could be improved, or a good question, or simply a question that is related to my research, that is important, the interest of the people. And the third part is, of course, a background of hard work. Those are the three things I look for people that I can hire or I can bring into the lab or teach.
Got it. You've been in this research field for over 20 years.
Yes.
So how do you see your field evolving in the next 5 to 7 years? What are some of the challenges you see, and what are some of the things you're excited about?
Well, I think that the challenges are more related to funding and to the lack of interest of some of the groups in research to go after basic research. I think that's the main challenge to the research that I do. I do research on the biophysics of the channels, not because they are fun and I like to see them opening and closing, but that is because if you know the basic mechanisms of molecular interactions, protein-protein interactions, permeability of the channels, you can think of a strategy to modify them. If you go only into translational medicine, you will find a quick solution to the problems that are currently occurring with humans principally, but you won't have the basis to do it. For example, translational medicine will be equivalent to give a mechanical system to a person with polio. but basic medicines is finding the vaccine against polio. So it's very different. It's quite different. You get quick answer to the problems with translational research. It's very funded, but we're not going into the basis, and we have to understand the basis of all the mechanisms in order to try to modify it. So I think that's the main challenge, to try to survive in this environment, doing some things that are not perfectly related to our research, but going into more deeper things. So I think that is one pathway that we're following in the gap junction area, in the communication area, in terms of matching diseases that are related to mutations in the channels and go after that. Really try to find out what are the basis of all the mutations that are available in the human body related to communication channels and attack that. And everybody's now trying to do that. So that's going to be the field probably in the next 10 years, to try to find out that. Another thing that I'm really, really interested in is in delivery of genetic material into cells. I think that's where things are going to be very exciting, because regardless the knowledge that you have on how a channel works, if you cannot change its properties, they're dead. You cannot do anything for a cancer cell that could be related to the channels. So if your channels are related in a certain way to a particular disease that let's say gap junction channels, and the tail is phosphorylated, not phosphorylates all the proteins that improve the permeability of cancer cells so they die, then that you're in the path. But if we just know how they gate, they close, probably we're going to be far from using whatever you learn in order to go after a disease or some problems that the tissue can have. So those are the challenges, and I think the way that the field should go after at this point.
Interesting. So the translational research, although it looks exciting, is a low-hanging fruit, and it'll only solve short-term problems. But
Exactly.
in order to get to a deeper research, a more basic research, is where, although it might take 5, 10, 15 years, it has a bigger payoff down the road.
Absolutely. Compared to the cyclotron in Europe, I mean, finding all these microparticles allows you to get a huge theory in terms of matter, antimatter, and many basic things that allow you to understand what you're going to do. If you don't have that information, you can go into philosophy. That's it. So,
That is true. Over 20, 25 years, is there something you wish you had done more of, or something you wish you had done less of?
oh, that is an excellent question. Now at this age, I can think of many things, but I think, and that's related precisely, I think, for this podcast, it is related to choosing where to go to work. That's what I should have stressed myself more during my first years. It's not enough. I think it's not enough that you get accepted to a place, but you have to know that that's the best place that you can get accepted into. If you don't get accepted into the best place, don't get accepted. That will be my philosophy. Of course, it's very difficult to follow. But in my case, why didn't I shoot Harvard? Why didn't I shoot Oxford? Those are the best you can consider in some scientific fields. And at my personal point of view is that I aim short. I never thought I would have the skills, or I will develop the skills that I have now. If at that time somebody had told me, come on, you can do everything, you're gonna make it, doesn't matter where you go, I could have aimed a little bit higher. I mean, I'm not saying the Albert Einstein was not an excellent place, but that was the one that came available to me. And it was so amazing that somebody had asked me to go and work with them, and then asked me to go on a postdoctoral, that I was thrilled. That's it. You have to think back, sit down and say, is really this the best? If you do that with every decision that you make, I think the outcome could be much, much better. So I think the advice is there to shoot to the stars. That's the best way. If not, well, they're going to tell you that you're not able, but never stay short of saying, oh, I might not be able to do it. No, let them tell you. Just aim to the stars. I think that's the best.
So don't sell yourself short.
Short. Never, never.
You have invested so much time, money, resources, emotions into this whole career. How would you like to be remembered? What would you like your legacy to be to your peers or to your students?
Honest and fun. I think that would be. That would be the best. Did they find my research honest in terms of that it makes or conforms an infrastructure to build from there, which is something that it's not easy to do. But it's very nice when people call you back and say, "Oh, you were right, and we're building on that idea that you published." That is something very important to be as honest as you can in your research in terms of really publishing the core that you want, the things that you find. So the researchers always around you find a source of not only knowledge but really friendship and good standing on the person that you are, so they can be better, including other researchers or students. So that I think that's the most important thing, that when they or any of the students remember me, they can say, "Oh, that was a fun class. That was a fun research. I really had fun. It was a hell of a lot of work, and this guy shouted too much, but I had fun doing the things that I was doing. They were interesting enough to enjoy doing them." That's what I think would be the best thing that I would like to hear when I'm gone and somebody remembers me.
So you'd like to be remembered not only for your research but also for your relationships.
Yes, those are the best.
Wonderful. This has been eye-opening experience for me personally and inspiring, because right now I'm in that final stages of graduation, and I've been exploring opportunities for postdoc, and I have a couple of postdoc opportunities right now, but I would have been leaning towards accepting them just because they are already available. But now I'm going to take a step back after listening to you and say, is that the best I can do?
Exactly. May I give you an example? You see it there in the wall. I didn't put it on purpose today, but you can see it there in the wall. That is a student I had in Indiana, the last year that I was there in Indiana. His name is Sudhir Kapoor. This student got that prize at the American College of Physicians with a poster that present on the research he was doing. He's an MD and was getting a specialty in cardiology at the Craner. He presented poster, he won the first prize. Well, after that, he told me, what should I do? And I told him, well, if you want to do research, aim to the stars. He went to Dr. Safetz at Harvard. I'm not kidding. 3 days ago, this guy sent me his second publication in Science Translation. He was doing patch clamp working, the things that he learned with me, and he's telling me all the time, Dr. Moreno, as you can see here, awarded for Dr. Moreno for excellence in science research and for being my life mentor. So that is what I want to hear. Exactly. Aim to the stars. If you don't get it, well, they'll tell you. But if you're not aiming, you're never going to reach it. So, yeah, go to it.
That's
so
wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Moreno. And on this, we'll call it a wrap.
All right.
If you liked what you have heard, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on how you are striving to be a catalyst. So I invite you to leave a comment on the Catalyst's website. Thank you for listening, and until next time, connect, discover,